Well, hello, welcome back to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. It's me, Stacey Heine, your holistic nutritionist, plant-based coach, and business mentor. I'm super excited to tell you about today's guest. It is my friend, Robby Barbaro. He is a New York Times bestselling co-author of Mastering Diabetes, the revolutionary method to reverse insulin resistance permanently in type 1, type 1.5, type 2, prediabetes, and gestational diabetes. Robby was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 12 and has been living this lifestyle since 2006. In that time, while eating pounds of fruit every single day, his hemoglobin A1C has been stable with a current A1C of 5.3% and time in range at 92% and an average total daily insulin use of 30 units. Robby graduated from the University of Florida and is the co-founder of Mastering Diabetes and Amla Green. He worked at Forks Over Knives for 6 years before turning his attention in 2016 to coaching people with diabetes full-time. He is the co-host of the annual Mastering Diabetes Online Summit, a featured speaker at VegFest LA, and has been featured on The Doctors, Forks Over Knives, Vice, Thrive Magazine, Diet Fiction, and wildly popular podcasts like The Rich Roll Podcast, Plant Proof, Mind Body Green, and Nutrition Rounds. Robby enjoys exercising every single day and spending time with his friends and sharing his lifestyle on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You've got to follow Robby. I love him so dearly, and his story is so inspiring. And I just love how he is helping people with diabetes eat more whole food, especially carbohydrates, and not to fear them. And you're going to hear all about that in today's episode. But before we get started, I want to remind you about my brand new to the US favorite beauty brand called Oliveda. This is a waterless, holistic beauty brand that is changing the beauty industry. In fact, it's growing 7 times faster than clean and conventional beauty. So I want to be sure that you know about this opportunity to share this with other people, in addition to learning more about the products. Now, every single thing is based off of the olive leaf extract or cold pressed arbuckine olive oil, and it is not based on water and preservatives, which is what I was using and promoting before without even knowing how inflammatory it was. So if you want to have really great skin and you want to take a holistic approach to beauty from the inside out and outside in, look no further than Oliveda. Now, I linked arms with this brand about 6 months ago, and every single day I'm blown away to see more and more people's results, their before and after pictures, and their total transformations from using waterless beauty that is not causing inflammation to their skin, and then also supporting their beauty and their skin from within. There are internal products that support your health and your inflammatory markers, plus a myriad of other health benefits of ingesting olive leaf extract, which I'll get into in another episode. But you've just got to check it out for yourself. You've also got to know that there's a business opportunity. So click down below in the show notes and see about what this brand could offer you. If you are looking for an income opportunity and a brand that is holistic and truly out to help change the beauty industry in a healthy, natural way, you've got to check out Oliveda. Now, if you want to get your best deal, just simply take the quiz. You will immediately get a free eye product when you purchase 2 of the recommendations. Or better yet, just join as a consultant, enjoy 25% discount, and then make 25 to 35% commission for everything that you share. No matter what you do, you are welcome here, and I cannot wait to serve you with waterless beauty. You are going to love it, and I can't wait to hear your transformation story too. All right, let's get to Robby Barbaro for Mastering Diabetes. All right, so we have Robby Barbaro on the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. He is a diabetes coach, educator, and international speaker who has been living with type 1 diabetes for more than 20 years. Since 2006, Robby has used an evidence-based approach to his personal health and fitness, built on a foundation of low-fat, plant-based, whole food nutrition. Robby, welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. I am thrilled to have you here.
I'm so glad to be here. This is going to be a great conversation.
I first met you at the PCRM conference. I believe it was in 2018. And I vividly remember you because I knew who you were. I knew who you and Cyrus were. But I didn't know that you were going to be at the conference. And I was like, well, there he is. And there he is with his mangoes. Of course.
Of course.
You know, and we were at this nutrition conference, and even though it's all plant-based, it's not necessarily all whole foods. And that's what I really like, you know? And so I was really happy to see somebody just at a table with like a box of mangoes. And I was like, this is the vibe I'm going for. So I walked over to you and I was like, can you can you take a picture with me, please? Such a nerd, but I just love what you do, and I'm so excited to share your message with everyone.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoy those conferences. It's been a while since I've been to one, since COVID happened and all that. But it was, it's always great to meet like-minded folks at those events and celebrate, simple eating, simple whole food eating. And there's great mangoes everywhere. Even I think I went to a wholesale market in, I believe it was Jessup. Jessup is where the wholesale market is, around that Washington, D.C. area. And I got some great mangoes there, and we had an abundance. In 2018, I'm sure Tara Kemp was there with us.
Yes, she was.
Jose Tejera was probably with us. Cyrus, I think we had a great time.
Yeah. So, and then just recently, just literally a few weeks ago, I saw you at the Woodstock Fruit Festival. And so fast forward, whatever, I mean, we're in, what year is it now? 2024. So that was 6 years ago. So 6 years, fast forward. And it was just awesome seeing you, because we were all really in our element. You were 100% in your element, because you actually live a raw lifestyle. And we're going to talk about that. And people might be mind blown to hear that, since you have type 1 diabetes, but I mean, let's educate the folks, right? They need to know about the truth about diabetes, and we're going to unpack all of that. But it was so awesome to see you. I know you live down there now, so I was really happy to be down in warm weather, to be surrounded by fresh tropical fruit, and to just be able to connect with a whole bunch of fruity people in the best way possible. It was epic. So I hope you enjoyed your time. Did you?
I certainly did. Woodstock Fruit Festival is a fantastic event. Kudos to the whole team that has been running that event for many years. And it was a great experience. This is their first time running it in South Florida. I think they did a great job. They got a lot of fruit from our friends at Miami Fruit. So there was a lot of fun varieties for people to try. They had, Pisang Raja bananas there, cool stuff like that. So it was a great event. It was fun meeting a lot of cool people and being, in a warm tropical place in the middle of January.
And I got to go to Miami Fruit for the first time. I've been ordering from them for years, and I was just thankful. And our son came with me, and he was like so happy to just stock up on durian. So we just filled our whole, carry on with durian, and it was great. So good times. Now, Robby, you have been living with type 1 diabetes. Let's talk about diabetes. I would really like to just start this conversation with the fundamentals of helping people understand what diabetes is, and then we're going to get into the diet that can best support anybody that's living with diabetes of any variation.
Absolutely. So let's talk about it. There are many different types of diabetes. All right. The most common form people know about is they hear about type 1 and they hear about type 2. All right. But beyond just those forms, there's a type called LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, also known as type 1.5. There's prediabetes. There's gestational diabetes. There's MODY, and there's actually several different variations of MODY. But to simplify things, let's just focus on what's classified as autoimmune diabetes, and then what's classified as basically a lifestyle diabetes, a non-autoimmune. All right. So type 1, type 1.5, that's an autoimmune condition. We don't know the cause. We don't know why, but the beta cells in the pancreas have been damaged, and they're no longer producing a sufficient amount of insulin to keep our blood glucose in a healthy range, right? People living with pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes, there's no antibodies present. There's no autoimmune activity. And instead of being characterized by limited insulin production, those conditions are initially characterized by excess insulin production, right? So pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, we do know the cause. The cause is insulin resistance. And because of insulin resistance, each individual who's living with these conditions, their pancreas is producing more and more insulin to overcome insulin resistance. So at Mastering Diabetes, the work that we do is we take people living with any form of diabetes and we lump it all into, let's just focus on one thing together. And that one thing is, if we can all focus on becoming more insulin sensitive, we are going to have some extraordinary outcomes. Now, people living with type 1.5 and type 1, yes, it's an autoimmune condition. Insulin resistance isn't the cause, but they can still be living with insulin resistance. As a matter of fact, most people are living with insulin resistance with all forms of diabetes. That's what's happening across the board out there at large. We do have over 100 million people living with either prediabetes or type 2 diabetes in the US alone. So that's the majority of people. We're talking 95% of people with all of diabetes are impacted by prediabetes and type 2, which is a good sign because we can do something about that, right? We know the cause, we can address the cause, and that's the work we do at Mastering Diabetes.
So what does insulin do and why do we need it? And then also, why is it not getting into the cells of the people that have prediabetes and type 2 diabetes?
So the primary function of insulin is to take glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells, okay? That's the primary function. Insulin is a hormone, right? It essentially opens the door of the cell so glucose can go from your bloodstream into your cells and give you the energy to function and live life. Now, people living with prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and I'm going to even make it clear here that type 1, type 1.5 are having the same problem, okay? Basically, and let's be really clear here. Let's be really clear. This issue of insulin resistance goes beyond just diabetes, okay? So if you're listening to this show, you have not been diagnosed with any form of diabetes, but you're struggling with your weight, you're struggling with energy levels, you're struggling with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, this is likely a warning sign that you are in the early stages of insulin resistance. If we did an oral glucose tolerance test on you, if we tested your fasting insulin levels, we'd probably find your insulin sensitivity is not optimal, okay? So what's the problem here? Why are people on this spectrum of insulin resistance? So it is a spectrum, right? It's not like a black or white thing. And as you let it develop over time, then things get worse. Insulin resistance is the precursor to prediabetes. And then once you have prediabetes, if you let the insulin resistance progress even further, then you're going to develop into type 2 diabetes, all right? So what's happening is insulin resistance it's the diminished ability of your body to take glucose out of your bloodstream into your cells. That's what's happening. And the reason why is that happening? What's the cause of that? What's the problem? The problem is excess dietary fat. That's the problem. Okay. Saturated fat being the biggest problem, or the trans fats being the biggest, then secondary would be saturated fat. Then unsaturated fats are much better. A lot of good research showing that if you replace saturated fat with unsaturated fat, you can become more insulin sensitive, but you could still consume too much unsaturated fat. So the primary cause of insulin resistance is excess dietary fat consumption. This fat ends up accumulating inside muscle and liver cells, called intramyocellular lipid. So you have too much fat inside your cells that inhibits the ability of insulin to open the door. So imagine there was insulin's the key. It's trying to go into the lock of the door and open it, but there's a bunch of gum inside the lock there because there's too much fat inside there, and you can't open the door. And so your body can produce more insulin to sort of overcome this problem and sort of jam its way in there and make it happen and get the door open a little bit and, get that glucose creeping through. But eventually your pancreas gets exhausted and you can go into basically becoming insulin dependent type 2, not because you have autoimmune condition, not because you have antibodies, but because your pancreas has become so exhausted that you're just not even producing enough insulin anymore. So it's something you really got to address, and the sooner you catch it, the better.
And what are the dangers? What is happening to our metabolic state and also just to our existence in general, to our health in general, when we have all of this excess glucose running through our circulation? What's happening?
Okay, so in this case, you're definitely going to have a situation of inflammation. That's going to be a problem. Okay. Excess glucose it can cause damage to a lot of the microvascular tissue. So that's why you see with type 2 diabetes, you see a lot of people with retinopathy, neuropathy, right? So that's damaging happening to these smaller vessels. Okay. And then over time, this stuff leads to a laundry list of conditions. Insulin resistance is a central node. All right. When you're living with insulin resistance, you're increasing your risk for a range of conditions. Okay. Heart disease, chronic kidney disease, fatty liver disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, Alzheimer's. Okay. So people are talking about type 3 diabetes. It's not an official medical term, but they're saying that basically Alzheimer's is insulin resistance of the brain, known as type 3 diabetes. Okay. Obesity. These are all connected to insulin resistance. And the number one cause of death for people living with all forms of diabetes is heart disease. And that's why it's so concerning that the low carb diet is what's predominant right now, because you're really trading one problem for several others, most importantly being heart disease, right? So you can lower your blood glucose, you can get things steady, but what are you doing to your vasculature system? What are you doing to your heart disease risk by doing that? It's scary.
Yeah. And there's a ton of things there's a ton of influencers out there right now. And just there, I feel, there's a trend happening right now, in the functional nutrition space and the integrative health space. And again, just on social media, pushing everybody to have a continuous glucose monitor on. What are your thoughts about this? Not for people with type 1 that need to be, looking at their glucose on a normal basis, but they're putting fear in people, making them say, think that if your glucose goes up, like you are just damaging your body. But it's like, isn't that actually what insulin is in our pancreas for? Like, isn't that why it's there to,
Here's the deal. Listen, I love CGMs. Okay. I love CGMs. And it's not, if the CGMs, I love it. Yeah. The CGMs are not the problem, right? The companies that are trying to get them into people's hands and experience, observing what's happening to their blood glucose levels. That's not the problem. I think that's fantastic. It's what you were talking about here. It's the fear. It's the misinformation about how to interpret what's happening on CGM. So a blood glucose fluctuation is a healthy, normal part of human physiology. And we know this from research on healthy humans who do not have diabetes, who they strap a CGM on them. They look at their blood glucose fluctuations, and it's totally normal to go up to 140, 150, come back down. It's not a concern. So what's really more important is for people who don't have diabetes. If you don't have diabetes and you want to understand and you're not using any diabetes medications, and you want to say, okay, I wonder what my blood glucose control is like. It would really be as simple. You don't need a CGM. What would be as simple as focusing on your A1C, which is an average of your blood glucose over a 3-month period, and focusing on your fasting insulin level. That would paint a really good picture for how your blood glucose levels are. And you really don't need to go much further than that. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a lot of hype around this topic. There is a lot of fear, and it's really quite often just completely unnecessary. I'm a big fan. I come from this camp of a lot of legends whose shoulders I definitely stand on. Okay. We're talking people like Dr. T. Colin Campbell, Caldwell Esselstyn, and a good friend of mine, Matt Letterman, who wrote books with Forks Over Knives, who's in the movie Forks Over Knives. And they come from this camp, the legends like Jeff Novick, Dr. McDougall. Okay. They come from more of what you would call sort of like a natural hygiene perspective to a certain extent, not like full on, but really that energy of like, let's not go searching for problems. I want your experience with health to be, in a lot of cases, as graceful and minimal as possible. Like, let's focus on what you care about in life and what you want to contribute to the world, not micromanaging your blood glucose levels on a CGM if you don't have diabetes. Right. Let's not just keep on doing test after test after test and looking for problems. I mean, it's just, it's this whole thing happens in the world of, breast cancer. And I know Pam Popper, who was in the movie Forks Over Knives, has looked into this and the screenings and how people respond to certain things. It's crazy. Somebody like T. Colin Campbell, his book Whole is incredible. It's a philosophical shift of let's just create health from the ground up, and let's embrace the complexity and the miracle of nature and food. And let's not try and act like we know that much more than nature.
Yeah. And I get caught up personally. I mean, I think it has a lot to do with all of this biohacking, like that is happening out there. And people are saying, you have to do cold plunges, you have to do saunas, you have to, continuously have a glucose monitor on, you have to be drinking vinegar before every single meal, which we can talk about as well. But also just, and then that just adds more stress, and then that adds more inflammation. And then people just, are not living in a state of health, right? And in a whole,
100%.
yeah.
That's our passion at Mastering Diabetes. So Cyrus and I created Mastering Diabetes in 2017. I had spent, 6 years working Forks Over Knives with Brian Wendell, he is Forks Over Knives. He's incredible. He's the brains behind the whole thing. He's a great friend. And I spent 6 years there working and learning a lot. And in the movie itself, there's 2 people that reverse type 2 diabetes. And then we were publishing testimonials and scientific articles and recipes every week on our website. And so we published a lot of great testimonials. It was super fun. But as you know, I'm like editing the testimonials, like getting them up on the website, putting the pictures up, doing all the logistical stuff. It was super fun, but I saw like something is missing here. It's like, if you are living with type 2 diabetes, you watch the movie, you see these articles we're putting up on the website, but you want support and you want to work through the nuances of how are you going to get off of your diabetes meds? When is the right time to reduce them? There's just so many logistics to just diabetes itself. So that's when I said, look, there's an amazing opportunity here. There's so many legends that are in this space doing great work. Joel Furman, Dr. Neil Barna, all these great people. But nobody had like one website, one program, like really focused on just diabetes and all the nuances. So like, you know what? We're going to create that. This is something that the world needs. This is a service that we're going to contribute. And so that's what we do now. Our goal is to work with people through coaching. Mm-hmm. And people have a lot of questions. There's a lot of challenges. There's accountability, there's community support. There's so many elements to what we're doing there. But you hit on an important topic, which is like, let's reduce the overwhelm, right? You don't need to do all these things. Let's figure out, what are your goals? What are your priorities in life? Why are you even searching for health in the first place? You really got to identify your why. And then it helps people not get lost in all the confusion, all the craziness. You could spend your entire day doing various things to improve your health. You still wouldn't do it all by the end of the day, and you'd have no time left for your passions. Right. So we like to simplify it and help people get directly to what's the most important change to reach your goal and live your life and love what you're doing.
Hey, we're going to get back to the episode in just a second, but I have a question for you first. Did you grow up on comfort food like I did? And I'm not really talking about homemade comfort food. I'm talking about the processed comfort food, like the Hostess cupcakes, the Ho-Hos, the Ding Dongs, the Bagel Bites, the Totino's pizzas, and so much more. I ate all of that stuff, and I ate a lot of it too. And guess what? I just love comfort food. I love those highly palatable, sugary, delicious, sometimes salty, oily sweets, treats, and more. They just hit different, don't they? They hit your taste buds, they make the dopamine rush, and it's just this craveability factor that you can't escape, right? Well, I have good news for you. You can escape that. It's called the pleasure trap, and you don't have to live there anymore. I broke free from processed food addiction because I switched to this whole food plant-based lifestyle, in particular one that is light on sugar, oil, and salt, or basically void of it. If you want 14 free comfort food recipes that are going to help you break your food addiction, just click down in the show notes below and grab it. All right, back to the show. I love it. So Cyrus and you came together. you both have type 1 diabetes. You both learned a lot from Dr. Doug Graham. Then you went on to live high carbohydrate, low fat, plant-based lifestyles, created a program. There are specific foods that you guys teach are, you have like a traffic light system. And, green light foods, yellow light foods, red light foods. I want to hear what they are from you in a minute here. But you live a raw lifestyle. Cyrus does not, but both are high carbohydrate. And I want to know why you guys are teaching high carbohydrate when most every single other diabetes program, except for a few other whole food plant-based ones that I know of, are teaching a low carbohydrate lifestyle. And I know you guys are out to change 1 million lives, to help 1 million people have better insulin sensitivity, right? So like you guys are doing that. You're already changing thousands of people's lives, and you have done that already with a high carbohydrate diet. How in the world is that possible?
Okay, so let's talk about why we teach that approach, and then I'll explain the traffic light system.
Okay.
So we both learned from Doug Graham. So Cyrus started, how many years was it before me? I can't remember exactly when he started, but I started doing, it was a couple years before me, but I started doing this low-fat, plant-based whole food approach with Doug Graham in 2006. Okay, so I've been doing it now for over 18 years, and the results have been extraordinary. And so when I first started doing this, at that point, I'm a freshman at the University of Florida, and I'm following Doug's program. And prior to that, I was doing a Weston A. Price Foundation style lifestyle. I was doing a Gabriel Cousens raw food approach, where it's basically a plant-based ketogenic diet. They weren't really calling it a keto diet at that point, but that's what it was. It was lots of oil, lots of nuts and seeds, lots of greens, but I had to minimize my non-starchy vegetables because there were too many carbs. There's too many carbs in bell peppers and carrots to really stay in that ketogenic state. So anyways, I have this experience, and here's the fascinating part. Living with type 1 diabetes gives me this incredible insight into what lifestyle choices make insulin work more efficiently or less efficiently. And the reason is because I have 3 key pieces of data, right? I can test my blood glucose with a meter or a CGM. Back then, and there were no CGMs. I was only testing myself, pricking myself and putting it on a meter. Then I can count my carbohydrates. But here's the kicker. I know how much insulin I need for any given meal because I have to inject that insulin. My pancreas is producing an undetectable amount of insulin. I have a C-peptide test. It's less than 0.1, undetectable. Any amount of insulin that's being used to usher the glucose I consume out of my bloodstream into my cells is because it's the insulin I injected. Whereas the majority of the people listening to this, you could strap on a CGM, you could count your carbohydrates, but you don't know how much insulin it took for you to keep your blood glucose at any given level. So I have this immediate feedback, meal by meal. I start working with Doug Graham. He's teaching me how to eat this fruit-based diet. My carbohydrate intake goes from no more than 30 grams of net carbs per day on the Gabriel Cousens program, upwards of 700 grams of carbohydrate per day in a very short period of time. And my insulin sensitivity increased by well over 900%. Okay. And I can measure this based on just glucose. So for anybody listening to the show, it's really nuanced, really into the details. I have removed fiber and I've removed fructose from this calculation because fructose is metabolized independent of insulin. So when I say I improved my insulin sensitivity from a keto diet to a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet by 900%, that is purely looking at the insulin I need to metabolize the glucose that I consume in my diet. Okay. So I have this amazing transformation. I'm a freshman at the University of Florida. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. What does the research say about this topic? And being a student, I could get access to any papers I wanted to. It was really no problem. So, and a lot of these older papers are pretty obscure and hard to find, hard to access. I end up learning that as early as 1926, in the Journal of the American Medical Association, there's a paper titled The Use of High Carbohydrate Diets in the Treatment of Diabetes. This is by Dr. Sansom, and he's showing as early as the 1920s that we see high carbohydrate diets leading to improved insulin sensitivity. And this repeats decade after decade. Dr. Rabinowitz in the 1930s, publishing papers in the Canadian medical journals. Then we have Dr. Hemsworth publishing papers in the British Medical Journal. And we move on to Dr. What's his name? Dr. Brunzell publishing papers in the New England Journal of Medicine. It goes on and on and on. They all have the same conclusion. The more carbohydrate you consume, the more insulin sensitive you become. And the fact that this is hidden from the public is mind-boggling to me. I do understand why there's confusion around diabetes. It's because it's one of the few conditions you can self-monitor. But we teach this approach. Cyrus and I teach this approach, not just because we had a positive experience. Cyrus had a very similar experience of transitioning his diet and becoming crazy insulin sensitive, eating a fruit-based diet. So we recommend this because it's what the research has shown. Since we've even known what the heck insulin was. Insulin was first discovered in 1921, first used in humans in 1922. And then those papers, published as early as 1926 and decade after. So this is just based on the science. And the reason there's confusion is because oftentimes there is research where private investigators or these researchers are comparing a low carb diet to a low fat diet, but the diet's actually not low in fat. And so I've covered this in detail in a lot of different presentations. But when you call a diet
less than 10%,
it's more than 15% of calories from fat. That's what we're defining. If it's above that, we're not calling it a low fat diet. Right. And so when you say, oh wow, like the low carb diet performed better than the low fat diet, and the low fat diet was 20%, 25%, 30%, 35%, then we're not talking about the same diet here. So that's one big mistake that happens in the research. But you also just see that people are confused because when they add carbohydrate-rich foods in the short term, they do see blood glucose spikes and they blame the carbs when really it's the dietary fat that they've been consuming for weeks and months and years prior that's put them in a state of insulin resistance. Right. So we teach a high carbohydrate diet simply because that's what the research demonstrates leads to optimal insulin sensitivity. We experience it in our own body. And now at this point, we've experienced it in thousands of clients who've also seen themselves become, more insulin sensitive by adopting our approach. So let's answer the question about the green light, yellow light, red light foods. Okay. So the green light category is characterized by foods that you can eat in abundance. It's very, very difficult to eat too much of the green light foods. It's possible, but it's difficult. And the reason is because they are whole foods that are high in water content and fiber. Okay, that's why. So the first food group listed would be fruits. This includes bananas, apples, mangoes, pears, peaches, papaya, you name it, whole fruits. Then starchy vegetables. That would be potatoes. That would be squash. So you have butternut squash, acorn squash, okay? Then we have beans, peas, and lentils. So many amazing varieties of beans out there, so many different fun varieties of lentils. Then we move into intact whole grains. That would be foods like brown rice, farro, millet, quinoa. Intact being the key word. These are unrefined, just as nature provided. Then we move into non-starchy vegetables. That's going to be bell peppers. That would be cucumbers, zucchini, celery. Then we move into greens, arugula, spinach, beet leaves. Like what else would be in there? Kale, okay? All the different lettuces, all right? So then we do have herbs and spices in here. Then we have mushrooms and we have sprouts, and all those foods would also be in the green light category. Herbs and spices would be the only thing that's not like technically a whole food, but most people don't eat too much of them, right? So we want people to be generous with their herb and spices, like go ahead. Now, the first four foods that are listed, the food groups, are intentionally listed first because they provide calories. Okay, fruits, starchy vegetables, beans, lentils, intact whole grains, they provide calories. One of the biggest mistakes people make when transitioning to a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet is they don't eat enough food. They are not used to the volume. When we say you actually get to eat more to lose weight, we mean it. Your volume is going to go up. The total weight of food per day is going to go up, and you're going to be dropping weight because of the change in calorie density. So if you just focus on lettuces or greens and salads and carrots and cucumbers, if you just focus on those foods, you're going to get hungry. And then you're going to go eat something you used to eat in the past, like you go run and get a cheeseburger, and you're going to feel better. And you're like, oh, wow, I need the animal protein. I need the burger. I need the meat. And it's like, no, actually, you just got calories. You got the calories you needed because you were not eating enough. So that's why we put those foods first. It's intentional, and you get to eat those foods in abundance. Now, the yellow light category. These are foods, they're absolutely healthy. Okay, there is a wealth of research showing the benefits of everything that we have listed in the yellow light category. There's nothing unhealthy in the yellow light category. The reason they're yellow is because we just want you to be cognizant of how much you're consuming. If you want to achieve optimal insulin sensitivity, the foods in this category are not foods that you're going to want to eat in unlimited quantities. You're going to be conscious about how much you're consuming. And that's going to be foods like avocado, nuts and seeds, edamame, so all soy products. That would include edamame, that would include tofu, that would include tempeh. Edamame being the most whole intact form of soy. We also have in this category less intact grains. Let's say you have some brown rice pasta. Let's say you have some Ezekiel bread. Great foods, they're fantastic. We're just going to say, hey, look, it would be ideal to have whatever that food was originally made out of. So let's focus on the green ones as much as possible and bring in the yellow a little more sparingly. We also put fermented foods in the yellow light category simply because of the sodium content. So when people come to us, then you have living with insulin resistance, oftentimes high blood pressure comes along with that. And we just want to be conscious of sodium content. So just be careful how much you're.
They need my sodium-free dill caraway sauerkraut.
There you go. I love it. That's fantastic. Now, the red light foods. These are foods we suggest you choose to just minimize or completely avoid. Either one is fine. And these are going to be foods like red meat, chicken, fish, oils. Oils are one of the most refined foods you could possibly consume. We're going to suggest you eat whatever that oil was originally made out of. Have some olives. Olives are in the yellow light category. Put those on top of your salad. You don't need olive oil. Olive oil is not better than olives. Okay. Olive oil is better than butter. Okay. So it becomes a whole compare to game. And that's where this traffic light system is hopefully helpful for everybody out there. We also put processed foods in the red light category. This is, of course, things like a Twinkie, right? Everybody knows that's a red light food. But even some of these modern plant-based burgers or packaged products you might find at the store, we're putting in the red light category. There's a lot of added ingredients, usually high in fat, usually oils added to a lot of these processed foods. Let's say even if you got some really clean, like coconut ice cream or something, it's still going to be super high in fat, right? Coconut meat, yeah, that's in the yellow light category. Yeah, have some coconut flakes. Put it on top of your smoothie bowl. We're just going to be conscious of how much you're consuming. You don't need a bunch of, complete, pure high fat ice cream. Like you could have low fat ice cream in the form of fruit. So we just put processed foods in there and we keep it simple. So it's a very simple system to follow, and it's very straightforward.
It's really helpful. And you guys explain it really well in your book, plus have tons and tons of recipes that people can not feel so overwhelmed with, because I think, your guys' whole goal is to remove the overwhelm, because you have the support system, you have the coaches, you have the recipes, you have all the tools and everything that everybody needs, and the education. But regardless, whenever somebody is making a lifestyle change, I have just found by working with people, it's still overwhelming. So having that support and that accountability, I think, is key, because taking a life that you're used to living, that you're comfortable in, even though it's not conducive to health, and then changing it, can feel overwhelming. It's like, I just got a message from a client this morning. She's like, I actually went to the grocery store and I'm going to start eating raw breakfast and lunches and just my regular dinners. And I'm like, this is amazing. That's so amazing. She's like, it's still only like, 60% of a change and it already feels overwhelming, but I'm like happy with it. And I'm like, that's a lot of change. And you should be really proud, of that change. Like it is overwhelming. I'm trying to start running again. And I haven't run like legitimately purposefully run, or ran, whatever, since, 2011. So it's been a long time. Like I'm more of a Pilates girl. Now I'm gonna become a running girl again. And I make really, really small goals. So, I love that you guys have all of the recipes and everything, because that is, I think, one of the things that people get so tripped up on. Now, can you explain to me, Robby, why the plant-based lifestyle is in this hierarchy of good, better, best? Like, why is it the best for supporting diabetes? Is it the fiber? Is that really the key?
That's a great question. I think it is a combination of a lot of different factors. I don't think you just pick one. When you're following the Mastering Diabetes method and you're eating these green light foods that we just talked about, you're getting a lot of water. The water content is huge. You're definitely getting a lot of fiber. That's definitely huge. But I think there's a key element of what you're not eating. So in our book, we wrote about advanced glycation end products, right? So now that you're consuming these green and some yellow light foods, your advanced glycation end product is just dramatically reduced, right? Your total saturated fat intake is going down dramatically, right? Your consumption of heme iron down, right? Your consumption of excess sodium is reduced.
Why is heme iron damaging?
I wish Cyrus was here to answer that question for you.
Well, it's damaging to it's oxidative, basically, right? It's oxidative within the circulatory system, and it's damaging the blood vessels little by little. And same kind of with the advanced glycation end products. And if people don't know what that means, it's like these are formed when we're cooking foods at a high temperature, and that can be, I guess, oxidative, right, to the body. And the sodium is damaging the endothelial lining because of it's increasing the pressure within our circulatory system. Robby is currently looking through his book right now, Mastering Diabetes, to try to find me a pinpointed answer about heme iron.
I think this book, let me tell you something. I encourage everybody out there, if there's a message you want to share with the world, take the time to write a book, because the level of analysis that happens for every single sentence when you take the time to write it out and get it clear. And so we have over 800 citations in this book, and you could easily go and look at every single citation on the internet for free. Go to masteringdiabetes.org/book-info. And then there's like this chapter by chapter. The sentence that was cited is written, right? So you could read the sentence and then you can see the paper and you can click the DOI link and go read it. So I'm pulling up the chapter where we talked about several of the reasons why we decided, why the science shows it's a good idea to limit your animal intake, right? And so this is on page 86. It's called Contributing Culprits, Animal Foods. And so we have a whole section on leucine. We have a section on heme iron, nitrates and nitrites, sodium, and advanced glycation end products being the primary problems. And if you want to read those details, you could pick up a copy of the book.
Awesome. So I just think that if people want to really heal, and not have to live a lifestyle of zero carbs, which I feel like is no joy. I feel, and I know so many people that are living with diabetes that I have witnessed saying, well, I have diabetes. Like I even know somebody that went and bought his own cattle farm because he was diagnosed with diabetes, and he's like, I'm going to live the ranch life. This is like, so no more carbs for me, like for the rest of his, like, so I think that's, I think that this plant-based approach is just so much more superior. And why? Because the plants are so protective to our body that even if you do choose to eat some animal products, you're still being so much more protective. And it's not like you can't have carbohydrates. So that's my viewpoint, but you guys really.
I want to say, like, here's the thing, like when it comes to the low carb community, we have way more in common than we don't have in common, right? So the person who said, look, I'm going to go live the farm life. I mean, kudos to that person, right? They're taking with the information they have, and like, I'm
not eating factory farmed crap.
100%. Our biggest problem is apathy, right? It's the people in the country that just don't care, who are taking zero responsibility and making no effort and making no change. Everybody in the low carb world is making effort. They're doing exactly what your client is doing. They're trying to make small, steady changes and doing something different than what they did before. Like, that's amazing. So I acknowledge that and give kudos. I do think, though, that we must raise awareness. My goal is not to tell somebody that's doing a low carb diet, like, you're wrong and you're dumb and don't do this. That's not what I'm trying to say is, I want you to know there's another option if you want to try it, right? If you're not enjoying the low carb lifestyle, if it's not going well for you, you haven't gotten the results you're looking for, just know that this narrative that you can't eat potatoes and rice and beans and mangoes is not true. Like, there's a whole science over here. There's a whole path, and we're going to support you through adopting that and applying that in your life so you can get a different outcome. That's what we're here to do, is really open up that option.
Yes. I love it. You guys are so supportive, and everything you do is so amazing. Before we wrap up, I want to know, because you have this display of fruit behind you, you are like living, you have type 1 diabetes. Like, the last thing that most people would think of, unless they're in your ecosystem already and know about mastering diabetes in this way and this path, and this joyful message, like, they would not ever expect to see somebody have so much fruit in their house. Can you just, Robby, because I think it's fascinating, walk through, as a triathlete, by the way, Robby's a triathlete, like, what do you eat on a daily basis? And also, like you said earlier, like their serving sizes are much larger than people expect when they go plant-based. Like, can you explain a little bit about what you eat and the volume of that?
Absolutely. So I'll give you the general gist of what I eat, and then I'll read to you exactly what's in my chronometer for today. All right. So the general gist is, I consume some sort of carbohydrate energy while I'm working out. So that's likely some dates. That could be some date water, where I take dates overnight, soak them, and then just have like date water left over. That could be sugarcane juice. So that's what I would consume during training. Then I would eat a calorie-dense fruit-based meal, right? So early in the day, that's when I'm focusing on the fruits that have the most calories, right? I'm eating things like bananas, mamey sapote, mangoes have a decent amount of calories. I'm also capable of eating like large amounts, so like papaya, melon. I could eat enough, but the point is, whether it's like a sweet fruit, or if it's not such a sweet fruit, I'm eating a bulk of my calories early in the day, right? I'm not trying to eat a bunch of food close to sleeping. We have enough research to know that you wanna have a big gap, and not eat heavy in the evening. So the first two meals, so we got breakfast and lunch, are going to be more calorie providing. Then I eat two more meals. I eat a pre-dinner and a dinner, and those are much more vegetable heavy, like a salad focus. That's going to be more things like bell peppers, tomatoes, zucchinis, things like that. And so pre-dinner and dinner are very similar. So here's what I had today, or I'm going to have today. So far in training, I had dates and coconut water, and those two things combined was 180 grams of carbohydrate. And then for breakfast, I had papayas and arugula. It was actually a pretty small meal because I had so much while I was training. That was only 112 grams of carbohydrate. It's papaya and arugula. Then lunch is going to be mamey sapote and arugula. And mamey is this amazing tropical fruit, which you can purchase from Miami Fruit. That's the best way to get it. and that's going to be 164 grams of carbohydrate. And then pre-dinner, I have arugula, raspberries, tomatoes, scallions, blueberries, and papaya. That's going to be 128 grams of carbs. And then dinner is lettuce, spinach, blueberries, strawberries, and tomatoes. And that's 73 grams of carbohydrate.
And
so that's the day today.
And your serving bowl is not the size of a it's not the size of
that's a fun one. Okay, this is a fun one. So a couple of years ago, we did a webinar at Mastering Diabetes. We had Cyrus, Tara Kemp, who's gone on to get her PhD in sort of mental health, and she helps people through the mental side of making lifestyle change, and myself. So all three of us, we showed pictures of what we ate, and then we quantified the volume of the food. Like how many pounds of food did we consume? And ended up being that Tara consumed like 8 pounds of food per day. Cyrus was somewhere around 11 pounds of food per day. And I was 13 pounds of food per day. So this is our edible quantity of food. Now, a normal human's consuming somewhere between 3 and 5 pounds of food per day. And so you're asking me about the volume. Because I do eat, fruit-based, and I eat so many greens, and I get, a lot of calories from things like papaya and all that. The volume is very high, but people think, oh man, you're eating so much food. But I'm like, no, I'm eating a lot of water.
Right.
That's like by mass, this is mostly water.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of fiber in there too, but by mass, it's just like, it's a bunch of water. And so that's the fun part about, what we do in our coaching program is really helping people adjust the calorie density, adjust the portions on their plate to make sure, the volume is high, the satiety is there, and you're losing weight. Because that's what most people want to do in our program. And if people want to gain weight, we also help people do that, because a lot of people come to us with type 1.5 that's been misdiagnosed, and they need to gain weight. And that's fun. And we help them do that in a very simple way, which is adding in some extra smoothies, some, extra potatoes here, there, stuff like that, to just have an extra 500 calories a day. And you're going to gain about a pound a week. Do that consistently and start doing some resistance training.
Love that. Robby, thank you so much for all of your wisdom and your insight and your knowledge today. I want to make sure people know exactly where to find you and where to find Mastering Diabetes. I'll also for sure make sure we link your book below. How do we stay in touch with you?
Awesome. Thank you so much. So you can find us on all the major platforms at Mastering Diabetes on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. We have a podcast. Just type in Mastering Diabetes into any podcast platform. You'll find us. And then personally, I'm relatively active, not like super active on Instagram. And that is Mindful Diabetic Robby. I'll post a little bit on Facebook, but really the best way to connect with us is through Mastering Diabetes. And we also have a website with a bunch of recipes and a bunch of great articles and case studies of people who've been through our program. And that's simply just masteringdiabetes.org.
Love it. Hey, I mean, don't give yourself some credit. Like you're, I think, inching your way up to almost 100,000 followers on Instagram, just you personally, aren't you, Robby? So,
well, thank you. It's been like that for several years now. But I was more active back in the day, and then we really shifted our focus towards.
But you're sharing the good message, and people are finding it, and it's really amazing. So I just want to applaud you and Cyrus and the entire team for doing all of the work that you guys do. You work really hard behind the scenes. I don't even know what it really is behind the scenes, but I know you guys are putting in so much to help other people, and that is what truly matters. So thanks so much for your time. Any final words? Are you good?
I just want to say thank you for everything you're doing as well, and having us on the show is great. You have a great platform, and it was fun to see you again at Woodstock, and just keep on doing what you're doing.
Thanks, friend. All right. Be well.